Welcome to this special series on how to make boba drinks using restaurant quality grade ingredients found in the majority of bubble tea shops. Today we're going to make a large bubble tea shop size batch of boba, aka Tapioca Pearl. Hey guys, I'm Kristen, the bubble tea queen, and welcome to my channel. I've owned award-winning bubble tea shops over the years, and in this video, I'm going to share with you some of my secrets. This is a giant 3-kilo size bag of boba. This is how restaurants get it, in a huge bag. It's airtight, and there's usually going to be one of these things inside to prevent any moisture as well. Even though this bag may look really sturdy, believe me, you don't want to drop it. The little bobas inside are very, very delicate. These usually arrive to the shop in a giant box of about 6. So it's a pretty heavy box. Once you open this, you want to make sure to put it into an airtight container, because if it gets moisture in it, it will affect the boba itself, won't make it taste right, the consistency will be off, and also it will start to kind of come apart. So definitely make sure you pop it into an airtight container. And some people might say, well, how long does it last once I open it? To be fair, I would say about 30 days max. So if you're a big boba drinker and you want to make this puppy from home, get a big bag, go for it. But if you're only gonna be having it maybe like once a week, it's really not worth investing in one of these big puppies. You're best just going to your local boba shop and supporting a local brand that you really enjoy. So you wanna find some containers that are airtight. Preferably, I really like these, but obviously there's a myriad of different options out there in the world. One 3-kilo bag will fill up about 6 to 8 of these. So as soon as we open one of these, we transfer it into these right away. If you're a big shop or you have a really high turnover of boba, then I think when you open this, you'll probably end up going through about 1 a day. Usually in my shops, we would go between 2 to 4 of these every day, up to about 6 on a busy day. So yeah, easily if you have a shop that's really busy, you could actually just open up one of these in the morning and then just keep making it throughout the day. You actually don't need to put them into one of these airtight containers, but you'd want to do that for sure if you have any leftover boba at the end of the day, because it will make a difference for your customers. Let me go ahead and show you exactly what the boba looks like. This is not going to be your normal tapioca that you can buy at a Chinese shop. This type you really do need to have imported from Taiwan. And there's lots of different sizes and qualities. I like to go for the 8.5 millimeter. I feel like it goes up the majority of your bubble tea shop straws. You don't have to bring in any sort of special size straw. And also when you're chewing it, when you have your beverage, it's not too big, if you know what I mean. I know there's also the really, really tiny ones. Those are also quite popular. And then of course it comes in different colors as well. And lastly, there are shops that make their own boba. Some of them put different colors and flavors in it. But again, we're just covering the generic boba today, the 8.5 millimeter. This is again the type that you can only get from Taiwan, restaurant quality grade. Let me just show you one thing really quick that helps you to know what type you have. So one way to know that you have this type of boba, especially if you're buying it online or from an Asian market, is well, the first thing is to, of course, look at the package. And if it says you need to cook it anywhere between 15, 20, 30, 45 minutes, that's when you know you have this type. The other type is called the quick cooking type. That type really only takes a few minutes. But personally, I prefer this type. This type is really soft. It's got a great texture, great flavor. The quick cooking type tends to be a bit more hard, more jelly-like. It's not technically tapioca, it's got a mixture of a bunch of other things in it. And then the other way that you can tell that this is the restaurant quality grade tapioca is when you push down on it, it breaks. Just like that. And it turns to powder. Yeah. So that's why I mentioned with this type of tapioca, you definitely don't want to drop it because yeah, half of your profits for the day will be gone. Now, sometimes when you get your tapioca in the mail, some of it may have turned to powder just in the shipping process, but don't worry. All you would really need to do is just get a fine sieve and pour it through it, kind of shake out all of the little powdery bits, and then you're good to go. If it's got a bunch of powder, you could technically put it into your cooker, but what I find is that that powder creates more bubbles and it tends to overflow more. But of course, if you don't have any of that powder and you're just cooking the tapioca balls, you won't have that difficulty, as long as your measurements are correct, but we'll get to that in a second. I think a lot of people have this misconception that, boba is boba, but believe me, not all boba is created equal. I think I've tried every single type of boba around the world, and I can honestly say that there is a difference. Because bear in mind, there's only so many boba factories out there, you guys. Even though restaurants or boba shops may cook it differently or add different ingredients afterwards, there's only so many factories that make restaurant quality grade tapioca pearls. So today I'm gonna give you my recipe of how I cook boba for my shops, but just bear in mind that you can always change things up a little bit. Maybe have it cook longer, have it cook less. Sit in the hot water longer, sit in the hot water less. And then of course, when you're done cooking it, you can use the solution that I prefer to use, or you can do the trendy, brown sugar or palm sugar. Some people just use honey, some people just use sugar. There's so many different variations of the syrup, of course, that you can use after you're done cooking it. Anyways, enough talk. Let's go ahead and dive in to the logistics of cooking the boba. All right, so real quick, let's begin with a little bit of boba 101. So there's a few different ways to cook boba. You could cook it on the stove using a pot with a lid. You can cook it in a rice cooker. Some rice cookers have the claw lid that goes like this. Others have this giant one that comes off like this. So there's a lot of different ways that you can cook boba. You can cook it on the stove with an open flame. You can also use an induction stove. I know a lot of boba shops do that because it's a really safe option. Preferably, I like to use a giant rice cooker. It's easy to use, easy to clean, and they last for years. Honestly, you don't go through that many, maybe one every few years or something. Just make sure you get a really good brand, and if possible, get one under warranty, just to cover yourself. Why not? So this one has the top lid and the middle section, and then of course the base with the spring in the bottom, and then the hot plate. Now what I tend to do is just take this middle part, put it in the sink, fill it up with water, and then put it back in. However, for this video, I'm going to fill up a container and pour it directly into here for you. I've had bigger ones than this, but this one is a 24 cup max. So you kind of have to learn your own measurements per the size of your rice cooker, because I found that the sizes of them tends to differ, even though it says one thing, it's not actually. But for this one, we fill it up to the 20 cup line, and we put in 2 of these. So I measured out both of these, and combined it comes to 700 grams. I also measured this out, and the 20 cup line comes to 6 liters. Now normally when you're cooking boba, you wanna do a 1:5 ratio. So if you're doing 1 cup of boba, you're gonna do 5 cups of water. But I like to err on the side of caution. So if you are making it at home, 1 cup is more than enough for 1 drink, probably 2. And basically you'll want to fill up your pot or pan maybe about halfway with water. You can't have too much water, don't worry, but you can have too much boba. So if you are able, go ahead and follow the 1:5 ratio. But if you are at a bubble tea shop, I find that 700 grams of boba works quite easily for 6 liters of boiling water. So let's go ahead and fill this up. It's gonna take a while for that water to start boiling. Now, of course, if you have cold water, it's gonna roughly take about 30 minutes for it to start boiling. But if you have a tap that has hot water, your time will be cut in half easily, maybe about 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes. So you'll just kind of learn over time how long it takes, and then you just set a timer and then come back. When your timer goes off, your water's ready to go, and it's as easy as that. Okay, so I've got my 6 liters of water here that I'm gonna pour in. All right, so that got me up to the 20 cup line. And of course, common sense type thing, whenever you have an electrical appliance and you are around a lot of liquid, you wanna make sure that the electrical wire has a dip that is much, much lower than the electrical socket. And then that way, if your boba container does happen to overflow and it goes down the cable, it will generally, due to physics, not go all the way back up to the electrical socket. However, if it went like this, then you're gonna be calling in an electrical team and it's just gonna be crazy. So thank goodness we've never had to deal with that. But yeah, so always have the drop of the electrical cable whenever you're dealing with water and liquids. So I'm gonna put my lid on. So let's go ahead and turn this on. So to cook on this machine, you go down. And this light, the cook light, comes on. That's when you know it's gonna get to that boiling status. I've got a double timer, which I will talk about in just a minute. I'm gonna go ahead and set it for 30 minutes, which is how long it will take for this to start boiling. And I'm gonna go ahead and do other things in the shop while we're waiting for this to start boiling. This is one of those things that you wanna do as soon as you arrive in. From start to finish, this will take an hour and 15 minutes. But to err on the side of caution, you wanna make sure you give yourself an hour and a half, especially because there's also gonna be the process of rinsing it and of course putting it in the container. And by the time your customers arrive, you wanna make sure it's already been in the solution for 15 minutes. So that way it has a really nice flavor and consistency. So we'll come back in a little bit. All right, so our 30-minute timer has gone off. Let's take a look. Yes, that is definitely a rolling boil. Very hot. Be very careful. All right, I've got my 2 containers here, which is about 700 grams of boba, and this should last me for quite a few hours. And then again, we're gonna do this a little bit later in the day. We always want our boba to be fresh for our customers. You never want boba sitting around for more than 4 hours. At that point, it really just doesn't taste right. I mean, technically it's still good, you can still eat it, but it just doesn't taste the best quality. So you wanna bear that in mind when you're making boba for your shop. You don't wanna make too much in the morning because then by the end of the day, it'll just be laying around and nobody wants that. So best to make smaller quantities throughout the day, and then that way your customers will be getting fresh, amazing tasting boba. So what I like to do is just kind of sprinkle it around. That way it gets an even distribution in the container. And pop my lid back on. There is a technique, of course, where you stir it right away until all of the boba rises, and that's totally fine. You can use that technique. But you know, when you're at a busy bubble tea shop, guess what? I've got a lot to do in the morning. The last thing I'm gonna do is sit here and keep stirring it all day. So this is why this technique works really well. You set the timer for 30 minutes, then you set the second timer for 15. That way you know it's getting stirred at least once, a really, really good stir, and then we'll go to the next step at that point, okay? At this point, we're just gonna give it a really good stir. So be careful here because it's very, very hot and there's a lot of steam. And again, we still have 15 minutes left for the boba to keep cooking. The idea is to make sure that none of the boba is sticking to the bottom, so you wanna make sure to scrape the bottom. Of course, use a really heavy-duty plastic spoon so you don't actually scrape the metal boba cooker. And then also any boba that was kind of lingering at the top, we wanna make sure that that's getting mixed in as well. We don't want it to remain stagnant. And none of the boba is sticking together, so there you go. Okay, so our alarm for 30 minutes has gone off, which means the boba has been cooking officially for 30 minutes. Now we're going to let them rest in the hot water for 15 minutes. We're gonna turn it off from the wall. Now in the UK, there's a little switch that you just click it and it just completely turns it off. But in America, I would suggest maybe just taking the outlet off from the wall, unless you have a machine that has an off button. But just putting it on warm, it's gonna be too hot. It really just needs to cool down completely on its own. We don't wanna purposely keep it warm, if you know what I mean. So, again, I've got an off switch. I went ahead and shut it off. And then I'm gonna hit my timer for 15 minutes. So again, we're cooking for 30 minutes and then we're letting it set without any heat for 15 minutes. What I like to do is give it one more quick stir before I let it set for this time. So there's no electricity happening, everything is off. We're just gonna let it set for 15 minutes. All right, so our 15 minutes is up. So with a total of 30 minutes cooking, 15 minutes sitting, the boba is officially ready for us to clean it. Now I'll show you exactly what I mean, but even though, if you take a look, it's ready, right? So the boba's looking good. We still need to clean it off because believe me, you do not want to get any of this in your stomach. So I've seen some bubble tea shops simply serve it from this state. You know, I don't necessarily agree with that. I find that a lot of people will get a stomach ache if they actually ingest it right now from this state. It really needs to be cleaned off. All of this solution in here needs to be just completely thrown away because the last thing you want is for your customers to get a stomach ache. This is hot, so I definitely recommend a good pair of heavy-duty gloves. We're gonna take this, put it in the sink, and in the sink I have one of these sieves. We're gonna run some cold water through it. The reason why we're gonna do cold water is we wanna prevent the boba from continuing to cook. We want to bring the temperature of the actual boba pearls itself down. So I'll show you what I mean here. pieces stuck at the bottom, which is totally fine, quite normal to get a few in there. All right. So we want to circle it around like this, which helps to agitate all of the boba. And if you can see in the bottom of the sink, that's all that brown gunk. It's going down the drain. You want to keep doing this until the water runs clear. All right, so for just a minute or two, get all the rest of that water out. All right, looking good. Okay, and so now we're going to transfer it into the container that we're going to be storing it in. We want to transfer it into something that's insulated, really, especially when you live in a cold climate like England, because we don't want the boba to get hard. So I'm going to transfer it into this, and I'll show you next where I put it. All right, so the final step for making our boba taste amazing is the solution. So I've got a 1 liter or more beaker container, and I'm going to create the solution in here. So we need 4 ounces of the Longan Honey Syrup, 1 cup of brown sugar. This is like a light brown to medium sugar, and then 500 milliliters of hot water. So I, for my staff, pre-mark this container, and then that way they don't even have to remember the measurements, but I'll show you what I mean. Now, Longan honey is great because it tastes just like honey, but it's vegan. We have a lot of people coming in and they want to have the vegan and they want the honey flavor, but they don't want the real honey. So we got 4 ounces of the Longan honey syrup here. It's gonna go just up to that line. I have it pre-done here, as you can see. There we are. And then 1 cup of the brown sugar. Just pop that right in there. And then, like I said, I have this pre-measured. I know exactly the volume, which will get me up to this line, but it is technically 500 milliliters for this next step. All right, I get about halfway. Give it a good stir. Make sure that all of the brown sugar and Longan honey is dissolved. I'm going to continue filling that up there. And of course, if you have a larger batch of boba that you're making, you'll just half the recipe and add to it, or you'll just do this step again and you'll add to it. But this is the ratio. You want to make sure that this measurement of the solution is for that 700 grams of boba. If you make more boba, you want to make more solution. If you make less boba, you make less solution. If you're doing half, you just half it. It's very important because throughout the day, you're going to be making more boba for your customers, and you want to make sure to always give them new solution. That boba will really nicely suck away all of the sweetness of this solution, and it will expel the liquid and the water inside the boba. So the boba will become nice and sweet. But what'll happen then is the liquid that's left in there will not be sweet anymore. So if you just take new fresh boba and you stick it in old solution, the new fresh boba will never get sweet, right? So we want to make sure to throw away the old boba, the old solution, and create new boba and new solution, especially every 4 hours. All right, so we've got the boba that we just cooked. We just rinsed it. It's ready to go, right? Here's what we're gonna do. Simply pour it in there. Give it a little bit of a quick stir. And as you can see here, even though the liquid level seems quite high right now, within about 30 minutes, that boba is gonna continue absorbing all of this really nice syrupy solution. It's gonna taste amazing. And then, like I said, we wanna keep it in an insulated container. The best way that I find to do this, because, well, this shop happens to be in England and it's quite cold, is I put it inside a boba cooker. So I've got one right here. So it's a small size boba cooker. I just keep it off, and I just keep it in there like that. The lid is always gonna remain closed, and you always wanna make sure to keep this strainer out of it, right? We don't want to keep it like this because that way the hot air would escape. So you want to keep it in a nice clean container. This will stay nice and warm, especially when the temperature is very reasonable. But in the winter, you know, there's no heating in here, you have the elements outside, maybe it's snowing, it does tend to get quite cold in here. So when the temperature drops really, really low, this will unfortunately not hold its warmth. So every 2 hours or so, maybe about 1.5 hours to 2 hours, you wanna go in, you just know automatically. You just kind of put your hand close to it like that, you feel it, you can feel the warmth. If you go like that and you don't feel any warmth, that's when you wanna plug this unit in and just turn it on warm. Turn it on warm for 5 to 10 minutes. Let it kind of warm up a little bit. But don't recook it and don't leave it on warm for more than 10 minutes because if you do that, it will start cooking again and it will get really, it just won't taste right. And the customers won't like that. So again, this is a really good option. Keeps it nice and warm throughout the year. And then again, in the winter, if it tends to get really cold in the shop, you have the option of making it warm. And again, last but not least, make sure that you always throw your boba away after 4 hours, okay? All right, good. So the last thing that I wanted to cover is sometimes I get customers or people who are really interested in making boba at home, and they say, well, can I keep it in the fridge? Can I take this drink home that has boba in it? Can I put it in the fridge overnight? Okay, I'm a boba connoisseur, so some people out there might disagree with me, but as soon as you stick a boba drink in the fridge, especially overnight, the boba gets really, really hard, and then by the next morning, it's actually really plump and huge and pretty gross. But again, if that's something that you want to do, go for it. It's all your personal preference. Will it make you sick? Probably not. But you know what? I don't like to take chances like that. The second thing would be, some people at home maybe want to make a large batch and they think that they can just keep it in the fridge. Again, it's one of those things that you could definitely keep it in the fridge and then maybe pop it in the microwave for a few seconds, maybe see how it turns out. But the best way to enjoy boba is fresh, hot, maybe sitting in a solution for about 10 to 15 minutes and that's it, and then consuming it. Boba is like a delicacy, and there are boba snobs around the world who, if you said to them, oh yeah, I like to keep my boba in the fridge after I make it, or oh, it comes from the freezer, or oh, I like to do the 2-minute boba, they will just be like, whoa, sorry, who am I talking with? So just bear that in mind, that boba is one of those things that is a delicacy, it is a dessert, and it is something that you really want to consume as soon as it's made. And then last but not least, everything in moderation, guys. I mean, I've heard crazy stories about people overindulging in too much boba and getting a stomach ache and just stories like that, you know? Let's just keep it in moderation. 1 drink, maybe 2 per day if you really, really need to. But boba is very, very starchy, and yeah, it does have calories. So let's just go ahead and be healthy and maybe consume 1 boba per day. Let's max out at that. All right, so now is our opportunity to give it a try. Let's see how it tastes. Got my little glass here with some boba. Let's give it a try. Oh my gosh. Perfect. It's like, has a little bit of a chew, a little bit of a give, soft around the outside, that perfect level of sweetness because we've had it been sitting there for about 15 minutes. A little bit warm as well, but again, not too soft. We're not chewing on a marshmallow, and it's not too hard because it's not cold and we haven't let it sit there and get cold or anything as well. And it's got like the perfect consistency where you don't bite through it, if you know what I mean. A lot of times with the quick cook kind, you just like bite through it like it's some sort of candy or mochi type thing, but this is just absolutely perfect, and I really, really enjoy it. The color is so great as well. It's got that really genuine boba look to it. Looking forward to adding this to a drink very shortly and consuming every single boba one by one and enjoying every minute of it. All right, guys, thanks so much for joining in today. Really appreciate you coming along on the ride with me as I showed you how to make this very special delicacy, boba, aka Tapioca Pearl. Please feel free to leave it a comment below. Let me know, are you a boba fan? Do you like boba? Have you had boba before? Is there a special type of boba? Do you have a favorite boba place? Let me know everything boba because I love it just as much as you do. And while you're there, please feel free to click that like button and subscribe. I bring you a brand new drink video every week, including fun recipes like boba. See you soon.